emergency as hundreds of protests nationwide.
The national emergency is Trump. What this president is doing to this country is unforgivable.
If this isn't fascism, I don't know what it is.
Kudos to Lara Logan for laying bare what we all know about the media.
Most journalists are left or liberal or Democrat. We've abandoned the effort to be objective today.
President Trump addressing the crisis in Venezuela, warning against the dangers of socialism.
We again deliver a very simple message. America will never...
A week together.
Well,
a 4-day week for most people.
We're in the news business, and there's a lot of news to talk about
There's so
today.
much to talk about.
Yeah, meanwhile, Rod Rosenstein is out. Let's not even debate it anymore. The Deputy Attorney General is expected to step down. He did announce this about a month ago, and he's going to step down in a few weeks.
Well, the departure comes one day, keep that in mind, after the former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe reveals an inside job to remove the president from office.
Griff Jenkins is live in our National Bureau down right behind the Capitol. Yeah. You know, Griff, after we saw 60 Minutes, one of the two of them was lying because they both had different stories.
Well, good morning, guys, and it sounds like we may get some answers on that in a moment. I'll get to that, but first, you know, Brian mentions we knew Rosenstein planned to step down, but now we know officially he will leave by mid-March, and we have confirmation that the new Attorney General William Barr will replace Rosenstein with this man. This is Jeffrey Rosen, currently serving as Deputy Secretary of Transportation. Now, Rosen previously served as General Counsel and Senior Policy Advisor for the White House Office of Management and Budget from 2006 to 2009 under President George W. Bush, and before that, he was the general counsel at the DOT. Now, the change comes amid the firestorm created by McCabe's comments, claiming, among them, Rosenstein considered using the 25th Amendment to remove President Trump, and that Rosenstein was willing to wear a wire. Well, the president's responding over Twitter. He says this: the biggest abuse of power and corruption scandal in our history, and it's much worse than we thought. Andrew McCabe, FBI, admitted to plotting a coup, government overthrow, when he was serving in the FBI before he was fired for lying and leaking treason. Now, the DOJ has dismissed McCabe's claims, but some lawmakers on the Hill are now hinting about hearings to learn more, Steve. Now, as for Rosen, we should get that official announcement as soon as this week, guys.
All right. Griff Jenkins, live in our nation's capital. He just mentioned there could be hearings. Lindsey Graham, who's going to head up the judiciary, he wants to look into these claims. Watch this.
It's one of the most significant moments in American history, if it's true. You had the acting head of the FBI talking to the Deputy Attorney General about replacing the president. So what I'll do, oversight is part of my job. We do have checks and balances, so the Congress will watch those who watch us. I'll try to find out who was in these meetings and talk to all of them and figure out who's lying, because somebody's lying.
So for McCabe to defend himself and for Rosenstein, if he ever shows up, to defend himself, they're going to have to go ahead and outline the severity of the situation as they viewed it on President Trump, who was just newly elected. They're going to actually do a preliminary Mueller report before the Mueller report, because for them not to be indicted for lying to Congress or having their book listed on fiction instead of nonfiction, James Comey as well, they have to sit there and say why they were so clear that the President of the United States was sold out to Russia.
You know what's interesting? They were, if this is all true, they were trying to oust the president. All three of them are now ousted. Rosenstein's gone, McCabe's gone, and James Comey are gone. And the president was hitting Twitter yesterday, and he was railing all of them. He said McCabe wouldn't go to the bathroom without approval from Leak and James Comey. He said Rosenstein was part of a treasonous plot and a coup.
Well, Rosenstein has said, I was just joking. So if he goes before Congress, he'll just go, I was joking.
I was joking about wearing the wire.
And Jim Baker is already down there refuting what Rosenstein said.
Yeah, he said it was too risky to wear the wire. He said it wouldn't even pay the benefits. What are you going to catch the president saying?
Sure. Now, if you look at Rod Rosenstein's departure and you think, oh, it's directly tied to the 60 Minutes appearance, it has been assumed in Washington, D.C., as soon as they got a new attorney general, he would put his person in there to oversee the Mueller investigation. The AG is now overseeing it. Rod had been taking a look at it. So let's see what happens with Jeff Rosen, currently at the Department of Transportation. Could be sitting in Rod's chair. promptly.
Well, we all expected this. We knew the states. We knew states across the country were going to sue the president over that national emergency. Now there's a list of them. There's 16 states. There are 3 Texas landowners and an environmental group suing. Here are the list of the states.
Yeah, and the list, really old Democratic states outside Maryland: Maine, California, New York, Delaware, Oregon, Hawaii, Colorado, Connecticut, Illinois, Maryland, Michigan, Minnesota, Virginia, Nevada, New Jersey, and New Mexico. So they worked on President's Day, and they got this lawsuit together. And guess where they're filing it? In San Francisco, a friendly court. And as the president predicted, game on.
Right.
Start working your way up the ladder.
The Supreme Court.
And what they want, well, it could go to the Supreme Court.
Probably will.
And ultimately, it could run through the 2020 election, which I'm sure the president would love folks to have this as a binary choice. Do you feel, and this is what it all comes down to, do you think there is a real emergency on our southern border? The president has made it very clear there's a humanitarian crisis down there. There's a problem with the drugs. These 16 states, essentially, they want an injunction to prevent the president from taking the money to build the wall. In addition to suing the president, they sued the Department of Defense, the Treasury, Interior, DHS, and the senior officials in each of those departments.
You know what's interesting?
To get their attention.
The president wanted $5.7 billion. He got $1.4 billion. But if this emergency order does go through and it does hit the Supreme Court and you have conservative justices that vote for the president, vote on his side, it would give him $6.7 billion beyond what is already authorized.
Right. It would definitely. You're up at 8. You're up at $8 billion. You're going to be able to get a lot done. That's over 100 miles. They say Barack Obama did 133. President Bush 43 did 500, close to 600 miles. This president will do a bigger fence, a better fence, and do a lot of other the steel slats.
Right.
Quick thing to bring up, though. President did not help his case on Friday when he came out and said, I did not need to do this. For him not to write down his the right thing legalese to say is a mistake. To come out there without notes and something that's this impactful legally was a mistake.
Well, he felt that as chief administrator, the commander-in-chief, that he had the right to do that.
But for him to say, I don't need to do this, goes in the face of, it's an emergency.
Well, I've seen people say that legal opinion. According to the lawsuit...
I just said it again.
Exactly. According to the lawsuit, they say there is no national emergency, and they say the federal government's own data will prove that there's no emergency because the Border Patrol data shows that unlawful entries are near a 45-year low. This is a misuse of presidential power, so why is he doing it if it's not an emergency? Of course, the president has made the case over the last 2 months. It is an emergency.
And you go there and you probably feel the same way. Mike Ritlin is a Navy SEAL, featured on 60 Minutes before. He's got a podcast, very successful, Mic Drop. And he asked Lara Logan if he could come over and interview her. They've met on 60 Minutes before. And it's a great podcast. I listened to the whole thing. But this is what's making news. And Lara Logan is a very respected war journalist at CBS.
Yeah. And so
let's listen.
Most journalists are left or liberal or Democrat or whatever word you want to give it. How do you know you're being lied to? How do you know you're being manipulated? How do you know there's something not right with the coverage? When they simplify it all, and there's no gray. There's no gray. It's all one way. Well, life isn't like that. If it doesn't match real life, it's probably not, something's wrong, right? So, for example, all the coverage on Trump all the time is negative. There's nothing, no mitigating policy or event or anything that has happened since he was elected that is out there in the media that you can read about, right? Well, that tells you that's distortion of the way things go in real life. Because although the media has always been, historically, always been left-leaning, we've abandoned our pretense, or at least the effort, to be objective today.
Right. And what makes this interview on this podcast, which runs about 2 hours, so extraordinary is she's a journalist from the mainstream media. And she's saying the mainstream media leans left. It was blistering. It was uncensored, an attack on liberal bias. She said it's horse blank propaganda press, no interest in fairness. She says everywhere around the world. The media is mostly liberal, not just in the United States. She says 85% of the journalists are registered Democrats. That's a fact. And then she jokes that the other 14% is too lazy to register, and maybe 1% is on the right. She also said Me talking right now? Professional suicide.
She said, well, we'll have to see, because a lot of people agree with her about that. The media needs to cover the stories.
According to her metric, 85% doesn't.
Well, she gave a great example. She said when you go to Israel, there's the Wailing Wall, and there's a small little section for women to pray. The rest of the entire wall is for the men to pray. And she said that's what the media is like. There are a few media outlets, including Fox, she said, where it's where the women go to pray. The rest is where the men go to pray, and they're biased.
Yeah, she also sat there and talked about basically her entire career, and she has won respect on both sides of the aisle, especially in the military community. She is fearless, and she's honest and fair.
She's a good journalist. Not a Republican, not a Democrat, she said. 60 Minutes correspondent Laura Logan.
That's right. She said she will not vote in the United States because the United States is too polarized. What do you think? Email us, friends, foxnews.com. In the meantime, 6:12 here in New York City, and Jillian joins us. Good morning.
Good morning, and we're following a story out of California. So let's start with this. First responders saved 16 people stranded on an amusement park ride overnight.
Legal immigration.
Oh, he's anti-non-white immigration, is what I think.
The latest, the National Emergency Declaration.
Yeah.
What do you make of it?
Ha, ha, and ha. There isn't a national emergency on our border.
There's no crisis there. I mean, there's a crisis on the planet, if you want to talk about climate change.
The national emergency is Trump.
All right, President's Day saw hundreds of protests against President Trump, including right here in New York City.
And that's where Fox and Friends First co-host Rob Schmidt was. He went down there to talk to some of the folks.
Yeah, so, you know, there was like 200-something of these protests yesterday. They were all over the country. This one maybe had 150, 200 people at it. And now you've got, what, 16 states filing a lawsuit, a number of organizations. I mean, they're coming out of the woodworks. Everybody wants to get on this lawsuit. So we went to talk up the deficit just as fast as anybody else at this point.
$2 trillion since it took over.
Yeah, I mean, you know, everybody's just spending money because that's a good way to get votes. You give people what they want. But it was interesting to see, you know, you go to something like this, you're expecting to see full-blown leftists. And the amount of moderate Democrats that we met there, people that said we do need borders, we do want barriers, but we don't want the wall, actually surprised me.
Was it of your opinion that they had any inkling that there could be a crisis at our southern border? Is it a crisis that the human trafficking, the drugs, things like that?
The first thing most of them would say would just to be actually laugh at the idea that there's a crisis at the southern border. And most of these people haven't actually seen the southern border. And when you would bring up things like, well, what about, you know, the human trafficking, the things that are done to women? So, yeah.
And they were off yesterday.
Yeah,
we are not racist. We are not homophobic. And we are not anti-Trump. We were born and raised in Chicago, and we are American citizens. The brothers were released by Chicago cops without charges a couple of days ago. Smollett claims he was attacked last month by men shouting slurs. His lawyer denies reports that it was a hoax. And Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan is defending Congresswoman Omar. Farrakhan says Omar does not need to apologize for accusing a lobbying group of paying members of Congress to support the country of Israel.
Sweetheart, don't do that. But you have nothing to apologize for. You were sent there by the people to shake up that corrupt house. Shake it up.
Farrakhan has a history of anti-Semitic comments. All right. Ainsley, over to you.
All right, thank you so much. 2020 Democratic presidential hopeful, Senator Elizabeth Warren, making a bold claim on minimum wage. Warren tweeting this: back when I was a kid, a minimum wage job could support a family of 3. Today, a full-time minimum wage job in America won't keep a mama and a baby out of poverty. Our movement is about making real fundamental change to fix this. But is that actually true? And who is minimum wage really supposed to help? Joining me now is Star Parker, founder and president of the Center for Urban Renewal and Education. Hey, Star, thanks for being with us.
You're welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. So if you look at minimum wage then, when she was younger, 1961, it was $1.15 an hour, and now it is $7.25 an hour, and it's been like that since 2009 for a long time, and there's some efforts to change those laws. But is that enough back then in the 60s to support a family of 3?
We know it was not. We're going to have a lot of fun this election cycle until the Democrats decide which progressive they're going to choose to run against Donald Trump for him to then beat them. But we can have this discussion about the benefits of socialism and or capitalism. Again, everybody knows that at $1 an hour, you cannot support a family of 3. Why she was even attempting to make that point is just foolishness. This is our poverty in our society. It was a poverty then. It's poverty today. That's why most conservatives argue for full family, that you take a minimum wage job when you're young. And in fact, 50% of the people that are making minimum wage today are young. They're single. That's their first rung. They get in, they work hard, they get another job, then they get a little bit more education, they get married, and then they start a family. But what's interesting on what Senator Warren is trying to do is now she's going after one of the other people groups within the Democrat Party. They have segregated and separated this country into all of these little people groups. So now she's going after the mama and the baby, that single welfare population, and it's just going to backfire on her once again.
So are you saying that minimum wage jobs are to get you in the door? They're not there to raise a family?
They're not only not there to raise a family, which is what a lot of people try to do. And the reason they're trying to do that now is because the government interjected itself in wages. Wages are negotiated between the person working and the person offering the job. But what we've done as a society is said, no, government should interject itself into the market of that. And so instead of people saying, let me get in that first rung and prove to this employer that I can do really good so that somebody else is going to want you to come and work for them, what we've done is gone to the nanny state and said, fix this for us. We should not even have a minimum wage. Wages are flexible because talent is put on a table and somebody buys that talent.
What do you think about these? There are 20 states that want to change the minimum wage, and it would be a gradual thing, but they want to increase it from what it is now, $7.25, up to about $15.
I think that those states are at risk for the states that say to the businesses, come on in here and create jobs, and you negotiate with our worker population what you're going to pay them. Competition is what changes wages. And you're hard-pressed to even find minimum wage jobs in the country anymore because competitive labor forces offer higher wages for people. The business should set that wage, and the businesses do set those wages. And states that interject themselves into that don't fare very well. You can look at Seattle and Washington State to see that.
All right, Star Parker, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Take a look at this. Thieves breaking into a store, stealing dozens of guns in just minutes. The smash and grab robbery caught on camera. And President Trump blasting socialism during his speech down in Florida.
We again deliver a very simple message. America will never be a socialist country.
So what are the voters?
Together, loudly and proudly, that soon the people of Venezuela will be free as well.
We again deliver a very simple message. America will never be a socialist country.
President Trump and the First Lady Melania addressing the crisis in Venezuela, warning against the dangers of socialism in Miami yesterday. So what do the voters think?
Well, let's talk to Todd Pyro. We have sent him down to the Cozy Corner in Miami Springs where he's talking to folks about the President and First Lady in that area yesterday. Todd?
Hey, guys. Good morning to you. Yeah. What an emotional day yesterday, speaking with the individuals outside the Trump speech about what socialism does to families, to societies. Take a listen.
They talk about socialism being the best thing for any type of government, but it's not. Listen, I came from Venezuela. Love this country. I love what President Trump is doing.
As a person whose parents came from fleeing a socialist country, that came to this country looking for the American dream, it's kind of appalling that these Democrats and liberals are calling for socialism.
It doesn't work. That's why we want to see Maduro out. I was born in Caracas, Venezuela, many years ago. Nothing is for free. You need to work to get what you want.
I'm so glad that President Trump said that we will never have socialism here in the United States of America.
Don't worry, these guys, they know what we're saying. Bernie Sanders, go.
All right, so with that, we just have a big announcement. 2020 contender now. Bernie Sanders has announced the Democratic Socialist is going to throw his hat into the ring for president. Steve's a Vietnam veteran. He lived in Europe, grew up in Europe. What do you think about the Bernie announcement?
I can't stop laughing, really.
Why?
It's a gift. It's a gift to the Republican Party and Trump. That's
okay.
all.
Explain.
Well, they're so out of touch with reality. They're selling Kool-Aid. They've been doing it on the campuses for years, and now it's spread out, and they have this utopian idea of everything is wonderful. And then you look at I saw the results in Europe and Eastern Europe, and you look in South America, you see Cuba, you look at Venezuela. People don't get it. It doesn't work, but they keep wanting to try to make it work.
As a veteran, let's talk about the wall. You say, first of all, thank you for your service. Second, you say, why do we help all these other countries control their borders and not ours?
Yeah, we have American troops in there are 195 countries in the world. We have American troops in 150 of them, 75%. So why are we out there helping them protect their borders, their national identity, and we can't protect our own? Doesn't make sense. It's illogical.
Great answers. Thank you. Emilio, parents are Cuban immigrants. What do you think of the Bernie announcement?
Send in the clowns.
Wow. This table doesn't pull any punches. Why do you say that?
Well, I mean, come on, look at their list of characters running. It's a socialist who's who. So I think our president's going to do just fine. We love him.
You call socialism a failed concept. Why?
Because it goes against human nature. It has three very dark ingredients. It has jealousy, division, and hatred. Sounds like a Democratic Party to me.
As the son of legal immigrants, when I asked you, what is your argument on the wall, you said to me, why is there even an argument? Why did you say that?
Because there shouldn't be. It's our border. We should determine who comes in. And our president is absolutely doing a great job. He's the people's president.
Understood. You know, when you hold horses back because you want to get them all fired up and then you release them, that's Renan and Frank. We're going to talk to them in the 7 o'clock hour. They're fired up. They're ready to go. For now, we're going to toss it on back to New York.
Guys, all right, Todd, thank you very much. Looks like a great breakfast down there in Miami. So it's official. Bernie Sanders, in an interview that airs this morning on Vermont Public Radio, announced that he's running for president. But it's a lot different than the last time he ran for president, because back then he was one of the underdogs. There's Bernie up on Capitol Hill. When he ran against Hillary Clinton, he was the underdog, but now he enters the presidential race for 2020 as one of the top contenders, along with Joe Biden. The two of them are leading in the polls. By the way, I've been told by people close to the Biden campaign, Joe Biden is actually hiring campaign staff members, so he is in it as well.
We heard that about Bernie Sanders, that there were reports that he was filling top positions. He was looking for individuals, possibly Chuck Rocha. Politico was reporting that he recorded a video where he was going to announce, and that video has not been released yet, if there is one.
Remember, he almost won Iowa. And then he did win New Hampshire. And then we find out about questions on CNN being given to Hillary Clinton ahead of time. Remember all the superdelegates that Hillary Clinton had before this whole thing started. And just remember, there was absolutely no competition outside Hillary Clinton last time around. You had Governor O'Malley, who was invisible, and some other marginal players. Now you have a situation where you have already double figures of entries, and a lot of which mirror his socialist policies. And when you look at his track record, remember, he's passed absolutely nothing. And when he was chairman of one committee, he did zero for the VA, and he admitted it was a total crisis that he presided over.
You know what's interesting, though? Then when he ran in 2016, it's a different environment now, believe it or not, because you have the socialist agenda, and he was basically the one who started that. That's right. And now it's gotten more and more popular. He was too liberal in 2016. The question is, would he be now?
Well, I think a lot of people up who are campaigning in New Hampshire are trying to out-Bernie Bernie. Yesterday, Kamala Harris was asked, about Bernie Sanders because he had won the big primary, and she said up there 4 years ago. And she said, no, I'm not a Democratic socialist, just a Democrat.
So she's not. That's the opposite of what Bernie is.
Well, you go down to Miami. Todd's in Miami, Jillian, and they're all saying no to the socialism because their parents lived it.
At least at that one table.
We will certainly see. Let's get you caught up. A hiker was airlifted to the hospital the next morning with hypothermia, but amazingly, he is okay. And this is a great story. A pregnant waitress left in tears after a police officer leaves a $100 tip. The New Jersey cop stunning the server on his $9 bill.
I respect all officers, so I mean, it just gives me a higher respect for them and their job.
The officer also left the waitress a note reading, quote, "Enjoy your first, you'll never forget."
I saw that yesterday. What a great guy.
That is such a great... There's so many thoughts, because he's right. Your first child, you're so excited, and she's young, she's a waitress. She probably needs that extra money.
$100 on $8. Not bad. All right, out on the streets of New York City, Janice Dean joins us. Janice, big storm moving through the northern plains.
Yes, and absolutely, D.C. could get 4 to 6 inches of snow, and we all know what happens to D.C. when they get measurable snow. The things shut down quickly. Let's take a look at the maps. Much of the country dealing with cold weather this morning. There are current temperatures 0 in Minneapolis. It's 24 in New York with the wind chill. It feels like the teens, feels like sub-zero temperatures across the upper Midwest. All right, our next big system comes out of the Gulf of Mexico, and this is the one that's going to spread snow and ice across the mid-Atlantic. Heavy rain as well from portions of Louisiana, Kentucky, and then winter weather really stretching from the Appalachians all the way up towards the mid-Atlantic, parts of the Northeast. But again, D.C., look at you. It's easily 2 to 4, maybe 6 inches in the outer areas of D.C., and then it'll go into a wintry mix and then a rain event for much of the Northeast on Thursday. So travel will be impacted starting tonight into Wednesday and Thursday. We will keep you up to date. All right, back.
Tony Evers is pushing to decriminalize possession of small amounts of marijuana for personal use. He also wants to fully legalize medical marijuana. And the Academy Awards will incorporate pot this year. Swag bags for nominees reportedly have a number of marijuana-based products. They will include cannabis-infused facial cream, chocolates containing THC, and VIP membership at a pot-friendly social club. The awards show is this Sunday, so maybe some high accolades from the awards show.
Thanks, Jillian.
Only from Philadelphia.
All right. Meanwhile, this morning, more backlash over Andrew McCabe's stunning claims from his interview with 60 Minutes when he claimed Rod Rosenstein that he talked about wearing a wire with him at the White House and discussed ousting the president. Rosenstein disagrees with that.
President Trump, of course, blasting these claims, tweeting in part. There's a lot of explaining to do to the millions of people who had just elected a president who they really like and who has done a great job for them with the military, vets, economy, and so much more. This was the illegal and treasonous insurance policy in full action.
So can Andrew McCabe actually face charges? Let's talk to Fox News senior judicial analyst and host of Liberty File on Fox Nation, Judge Anna Napolitano. So what happens to Mr. McCabe?
Well, you can't blame the president for being furious. His fury should be aimed at Rod Rosenstein, whom he could fire with a stroke of a pen or a phone call. They're going to let him stay on for another month until his replacement is in place at the Justice Department. The reason he's staying on is the top 2 people in the DOJ are supposed to be Senate confirmed, and his replacement, a very competent lawyer by the name of Jeff Rosen, it will take about a month for the replacement to come in. Did they commit a crime? I don't think so. They certainly committed fireable offenses. They talked about using a, thanks be to God, I hated this amendment when it was enacted because it permits a legal coup. Legal coup. They talked about following the 25th Amendment. Now, Rosenstein has denied this to the president, and he's denied it in other forums. And McCabe says it happened. Somebody's telling the truth, and somebody's not. And up to Senator Graham, thankfully, and the Senate Judiciary Committee is going to hear from both of them.
Tiebreaker is Jim Baker. Jim Baker's already testified in his behind closed doors that he said not only did he bring it up, but they even had 2 people that they believe would have been turning on the president in order to complete the coup.
They actually counted
Sessions and John Kelly.
They actually counted heads in the cabinet. Now, here's their defect. The way the 25th Amendment is written, they must have the vice president with them, whose loyalty to the president is legendary and unshakable, thanks be to God. So even if they had the entire cabinet,
he would become president.
Even if they had the entire cabinet, the 25th Amendment in this respect is fruitless without the agreement of the vice president.
Ultimately, it just shows that at the highest levels of the Department of Justice and the FBI, there seemed to be a bias against this man.
And a willingness to do the most extreme thing the Justice Department's ever done. It's one thing for the DOJ to investigate a vice president like Spiro Agnew, but to manipulate the president of the United States out of office, this is breathtaking, historic, and of course it didn't work.
They were trying to oust the president, but those 3 individuals are the ones that got ousted. You have Comey and McCabe and Rosenstein.
I don't think Comey was involved, or at least he wasn't in the FBI at the time these conversations took place.
Because it was in response to Comey's fire.
Correct. Some may say this was discussed before Comey left, but we haven't heard any evidence.
But Joe, Judge, here's his strongest case. They're going to have to sit there and tell Lindsey Graham's committee, Judiciary Committee, why they believe the president was an agent of Russia. They're going to have a mini Mueller trial,
Yes.
either in front or behind closed doors,
So
before Mueller gives us his results.
This is either going to be without credibility, or they're going to have to reveal some things that Mueller doesn't want revealed.
Right.
So that's going to be up to Senator Graham and the Judiciary Committee if they do this in public or private. I am against all these things in private.
It all depends on if they have the hearing before or after the Mueller result. All right, Judge, thank you very much.
Pleasure, guys.
All right, meanwhile, straight ahead, fewer Americans are doing things like going to church and volunteering, and it's fueled some crucial social institutions. New data reveals fewer Americans participating in social institutions, such as going to church and even volunteering. Our next guest visited towns all across the country experiencing this social ruin and is here to explain how it led President Trump to the White House. Author of a brand new book released this morning is called Alienated America. Tim Carney joins us live right now. Tim, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you.
Okay. You talk about alienated America. Where is the American dream still alive in America?
So I did go to lots of places where the American dream is still alive, and there's mostly two types of places. One, the elites really do have strong communities. I could talk about Chevy Chase, Maryland, other places where people have strong, lots of college education, but most importantly, there are really strong religious communities in middle America that have such good outcomes. So much of rural America, you see opioid overdoses, you see these other problems. Those don't exist in places like Salt Lake City, or I visited Oostburg, Wisconsin, where there's a really strong church at the center. So in America today, because we're so secularized, the church communities are really the ones that are standing out there as extra strong, providing connection and support.
Well, here's the problem. Not as many people are going to church.
That's a big problem, and there's a lot of reasons. One is modern technology. It changes the way we interact. It provides all sorts of distractions. You can sit at home on Sunday morning. But another is that the left is chasing the church out of the public square. People like Nancy Pelosi, I quote her in my book saying, I do my religion on Sundays.
Right.
But you can't. Religion is supposed to be out there. It's supposed to be part of the community. It's supposed to be an institution. And those institutions are what I talk about in Alienated America. That's what you need to connect you to other people to build a family.
And so how does that all connect with how Donald Trump was elected president?
So when Trump said, the American dream is dead, the elites did not buy it.
Right.
But the suffering is real. You know this. A blue-collar guy doesn't make as much money as his father. It's harder to form these families. So I did go around to the places where the American dream seemed dead and the places where it seemed alive. And what I found in so many of these places where it seemed dead, it wasn't simply economics. It was a loss of these institutions. And so the other politicians weren't out there to articulate that pain. They weren't out there to say America, because it seemed alive in the elite circles.
How do we turn it around?
So it's got to happen on the local level. That's the thing. Somebody like Bernie Sanders who wants to centralize.
Just declared he's running for president.
And he sees these problems, but he thinks the central government is a problem. It never will be. Trump has started by stopping.
Rod Rosenstein is out.
One day after Andrew McCabe reveals an inside job to remove the president.
To manipulate the president of the United States out of office? This is breathtaking, historic.
Those brothers questioned in the alleged attack on Empire actor Jussie Smollett are speaking out. They said, quote, "We are not racist."
Question is, why do so many people believe it? And the answer is they despise Donald Trump.
California leading a multi-state lawsuit against President Trump's emergency declaration, taking the legal battle to the liberal Ninth Circuit Court.
Washington Post columnist Matthew Sears is comparing MAGA hats to Ku Klux Klan hoods.
Bernie Sanders has announced the Democratic Socialist is going to throw his hat into the ring for president.
America will never be a socialist country.
Well, here we go. Another one in this race. We're up to 9. Bernie Sanders does what many people said he unofficially did over the weekend, recorded a I'm in video and announces I'm going to be in for 2020 like I was in for 2016.
He had a radio interview this morning and he said, yep, I'm in. I'm running for president. So let's show you the list of all the Democrats. Oh, actually, I think we have that. Let's hear it.
You know, the thing about Bernie, now that he's declared he's going to run for president on the Democratic Party, he has been a national leader ever since he ran against Hillary Clinton in 2016 and did really well. But even though he is one of the national leaders in the Democratic Party, he refuses to join the Democratic Party. He described himself as a Democratic socialist. And when you look at his agenda, it's very clear, in addition to universal health care for all, there are many other things that made Bernie in 2016 stand out. Watch this.
Tuition free. 3 months paid family and medical leave. A living wage, $15 an hour. Healthcare is a right of all people, not a privilege. Radical ideas are now mainstream ideas because of your support.
Medicare for all, the single-payer system, free college, his anti-Israel policy, that was basically his foreign policy. It won him New Hampshire. It almost took Iowa. It scared the heck out of Hillary Clinton. And then all of a sudden, Debbie Wasserman-Schultz, working behind the scenes, cut his knees out, along with the superdelegates that were acquired before Bernie Sanders, who was actually in.
Well, if you vote for him, it's a very liberal agenda. You heard what he's for. You know what he's for. 2016 was a different race than 2020. It looks like the country, more and more people are supporting the socialist agenda, and that's what you get with him. When we asked the voters, that we did a poll last week, when the voters were asked, who do you want? Joe Biden was #1 and Bernie Sanders was #2. So far, Joe Biden hasn't gotten in the race, so it looks like Bernie Sanders would do really well.
Biden and Bernie sounds like will be in it. They are the two candidates on the Democratic side with the best name recognition. But, you know, 4 years later, things have really changed. In 2016, Bernie Sanders was a real contrast to Hillary Clinton. And now when you look at the things that he ran on 4 years ago, that's what everybody's running on, it seems like. When it comes to Medicare for all, you've got Harris, Gillibrand, Booker, Warren, Klobuchar. They're all for that. And then Amy Klobuchar, who yesterday said she's not for free college for everybody.
She said she wants the first 2 paid for, like a community college.
Well, she said that she did support Bernie on his $15 per hour minimum wage. So she is in unison with Bernie on that, just not the free college business.
But what about the timing? The timing of a socialist declaring for president one day after the President of the United States condemned socialism in Miami, and we look at Venezuela as a case in point of what could happen to America with all our natural resources, with all our history, like Venezuela, much richer than Venezuela, and all their oil resources, they have gone into the toilet as a country. They can't even stock their shelves with food that would be too expensive to buy anyway because of inflation. So she's like, look at me. If I'm a Democrat, if I'm running the Democratic committee, I'd be outraged right now. He won't even join my party, yet he wants my nomination. I'd say hit the road, one in or out.
Well, they tried to create a law, a bylaw for the DNC. Apparently that's not true. So anyway, the news this morning, Bernie's in it to win it. We'll keep you posted.
What do you think Kamala Harris is saying right now?
Bring it on. Why not? The more the merrier. Big contrast there. Meanwhile, a new report reveals a possible motive in the alleged attack on Empire actor Jussie Smollett.
It comes as the brothers, once considered persons of interest, are breaking their silence.
Yep, from Nigeria, but born in Chicago. Matt Finn is live in Chicago, where there are no plans for the actor to meet with police again. But Matt, the police want to meet with the actor, right?
Certainly. This morning, the ball is in Jussie Smollett's court. Chicago police have formally requested a follow-up interview with Jussie Smollett as of 5 p.m. Eastern. Yesterday, Chicago police tell us they did not hear back from him. It was a holiday, so they were giving him the benefit of the doubt. Jussie Smollett's crisis manager says the actor is going to continue to cooperate with detectives. However, if Smollett does not, there is a scenario in the next 48 hours that police present this case to prosecutors or a grand jury. According to CBS, Osundario brothers told police during interrogations they rehearsed the attack with Smollett, and that Smollett was upset that a death threat he allegedly sent to himself a week prior with a MAGA return address did not garner more attention, so he proceeded with this elaborate alleged attack. Smollett's attorney says anyone claiming Jussie played a role in his own attack is lying. Here's why Smollett said he feels he was allegedly assaulted.
Why do you think you were targeted? I can just assume. I mean, I come really, really hard against 45. I come really, really hard against his administration.
This morning, Chicago police have not formally called Jussie Smollett the suspect in this case. However, they're no longer calling him necessarily the victim, referring to him as the person who reported this incident. Brian Ainsley, Steve.
Wow. Where does he go from here? Thanks, Matt. Great work. You know, it looks like some people who immediately backed him are backing off. Kamala Harris won't comment on the Smollett probe. We have a soundbite coming up later. Nancy Pelosi.
She did comment that when it first happened.
Yeah, deletes a tweet condemning the attack. It's called an attack against humanity. She has since deleted that. And the question is, too, is what was he getting at? And what is he going to be charged? If you think about how the racial unrest in this country and the anti-Trump movement, they're not just anti-Trump. They have hatred towards him. Right. For him as a African-American to say it was anti-gay attack, it was a race attack, and it was because I don't like Trump, there could be a widespread riots because of that.
Well, Larry Elder had some comments on why the media ran with this and why some of those politicians, why they weighed in. Listen.
Look, the reason people believed it is because they wanted to believe it. They believe Donald Trump is a racist, and they believe racism remains a major problem in America. And you put those two together, voila, the story had legs. Question is, why did so many people believe it? And the answer is they despise Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a racist. Donald Trump's supporters are racist. And Donald Trump supporters are not only racist, they're also homophobic. And they're also people that engage in violence. So they wanted to believe it and ran with it, and now they're embarrassed.
There you go. There is a thread, reportedly in the initial story that Mr. Smollett gave Chicago police. He was talking about, they said something about MAGA, Make America Great Again. There's a headline in Salon that says this: scholar Matt Sears says someday MAGA hats will be shameful secrets like Klan robes. Matt Sears is a scholar. He's also a Washington Post columnist. When he was speaking to Salon, he said this: in a few generations from now, finding a MAGA hat in your grandparents' closet would be like seeing your grandfather's or grandmother's face in one of those lunch counter photos harassing the black people who are trying to fight Jim Crow and win their equal human rights. He also says in that article in Salon, to wear Donald Trump's MAGA hat and other uniforms is an endorsement of everything he stands for. People who support Donald Trump need to be held morally accountable. And then that ties in with what happened in Overland Park, Kansas a few days ago at a Vans store.
Yeah, this 14-year-old child walks into the Vans store. Vans are those shoes that, a lot of teenagers love. Yeah. Walks in there, and he's wearing a Make America Great Again hat, and he's offended by the employee who makes comments about it and uses profanity. The mother walks in, Mama Bear, and defends her son. Listen.
Nothing to you. And what did you say to my son? To my 14-year-old son? What did you say? My son walked into the store. That gentleman first told him, take off your hat. He said nothing to him. 14-year-old child. Then he said, F you to my son. My son said nothing to him, did nothing. That is a disrespectful punk right there. He did nothing.
Apparently, after the employee told the kid when he walked in, he said, take off your MAGA cap. Then he said, F you to the kid. And then the mother said, what did you say to my son, my 14-year-old? He said back to her, I'm sure he's heard it before. And then she said, where's the manager? And that's who you saw right there. And that's the guy who fired the kid who said F you to the 14-year-old. Unbelievable. Vans, by the way, says that the corporate office said the actions and comments from this employee is in contrast with our values and beliefs.
All right, let us know what you think about that. Friends at FoxNews.com. Let's hand it over to Jillian, who has some headlines.
And that's right. Good morning. And let's start with this. California leading a multi-state lawsuit against President Trump's emergency declaration. 16 Democratic attorneys general taking the legal battle to the liberal Ninth Circuit Court, claiming the action is unconstitutional. This after the president declared a national emergency, allowing him to move about $6 billion in military funds to build a southern border wall. The states say moving money will hurt their economies. A Chanel fashion show for the first time last month. His exact cause of death is unknown. Karl Lagerfeld was 85 years old.
Icon in the industry. Yep.
85
That's so
years.
sad.
All right. Thank you, Jillian.
Everything we love about the clothes we can't afford.
I know.
Chanel, he created. He's behind that.
Yep.
It's amazing.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right, back to some breaking news. Bernie Sanders is running for president again, releasing this video moments ago.
Our campaign is about transforming our country and creating a government based on the principles of economic, social, racial, and environmental justice.
Well, does he have a chance this time around? We're going to ask Harry Reid's former communications director, coming up next.
And heads up, the close call for one hockey announcer.
As president in modern American history. It is not only about winning the Democratic nomination and the general election. Our campaign is about transforming our country.
There you go. The tape that was evidently done over the weekend is now out. A Fox News alert. Moments ago, Bernie Sanders officially announced his second run for president of the United States. He's 76 years old. But will it work for him in he's 77. Will it work for him this time around now that he's 77 and more experienced? Let's ask Democratic strategist John Summers. He served as communications director for former House Majority Leader Harry Reid. The senator, of course, recovering. He had cancer, and he's trying to work his way back. They got it early, you mentioned. So Bernie Sanders in. Are you surprised?
No, I'm not surprised. I mean, there's been plenty of talk about it. And, you know, it takes a while to build up the team that you need in order to announce a presidential campaign and really start running. So, no, I'm not really surprised. But finally, you guys got the socialists that Republicans have been waiting for, right? I mean,
the day after the president condemns it in Miami.
Absolutely. But this is an important time because he's actually going to help demonstrate the difference between socialism and what Democrats are standing for. And I think that that's been something that the Republican strategists have really tried to conflate. They've tried to label Democrats as socialists, and now Bernie Sanders coming out with his campaign will clearly be able to show a difference.
And John, I think you're right. Outside Howard Schultz and Mike Bloomberg, who are Democrats who are thinking about getting in, they quickly said, almost every candidate, I'm for free college. I am for the Green Deal. I am for getting rid of private insurance in Kamala Harris's case. So it was really hard to push back when they come out and said that. But in Bernie Sanders, you have Medicare for all, you have free college, and you have a single payer. He also is somebody that is not a Democrat. He wants to use the apparatus of the Democratic Party, but he won't go into the party. Why does Democrats put up with that?
Well, I mean, as you hear so often, we are a big tent. But personally, I'm bothered by it. I'm bothered by the fact that over the last 2 years, we had the State of the Union address, we had the Democratic response to the State of the Union address, and then we had Bernie Sanders' response to the State of the Union address. So if he wants to run as a separate, socialist, then great, go ahead and do that. But I do have issues with the fact that, he, to your point, that he's trying to use the Democratic Party apparatus in order to become president.
Senator Elizabeth Warren came out yesterday and did expand on some programs. Now we have big ideas. She says she wants a wealth tax in order to pay for free preschool. Your reaction as that being a viable program that will resonate with the majority of the American people?
I think it's an important conversation that we're having. I don't know that that's the ultimate solution that's going to come out of it. But the reality is you've got a lot of working families out there who, need to have jobs to pay the bills, but childcare takes out such a big chunk of their income that it really does make it difficult. And you have a lot of families who have to decide, do I work or do I just stay home and take care of my child? So I think we do need to do something to address the lack of affordable childcare in America. Whether that's a solution, I don't know. I think it is, it's easy to look at these things, whether it's Green New Deal or...
That's how many years tourists at the Grand Canyon may have been exposed to radiation. A park official claims paint buckets in a museum building contained uranium ore. Although the buckets were removed, the officials say the Parks Department never let the public know. I'm going to walk over here and read. Next zero. That's how many candidates the Obamas are planning to endorse for the Democratic nomination for president. That, according to the New York Times, which is a daily newspaper, citing sources and interviews from former advisors. And finally, got to find number 3. Here we go. 3 feet. That's the length of El Chapo, the alligator. Police finding the beast guarding a stash of drugs, that's big but blurry, during a drug raid in Pennsylvania. The reptile nicknamed after the notorious drug lord El Chapo, who was convicted last week of doing everything wrong. Stephen Ainsley?
In your defense, the numbers on the floor are teeny tiny.
Very small.
Very small. But we seamlessly do it.
Thank you, Brian. Meanwhile, in other news, the fight for free speech on college campuses is now getting the attention of Iowa lawmakers. Conservative students there are pushing a new bill to protect their First Amendment rights in and out of the classroom on campus.
This comes after the federal court ruled in favor of a Christian student group that said the University of Iowa discriminated against that group because their leaders must abide by a statement of faith. And joining us now to discuss this is Jordan Landau, campusreform.org correspondent and student at the University of Iowa. So what's the latest? Because I know you're part of the group that went to lawmakers and said we need a bill that allows for free speech on campus. What happened there?
Yeah, so I'm not a lawyer, but the University of Iowa barring business leaders in Christ for following the teachings of their faith is a clear violation of our First Amendment rights. And as a Jewish student, I applaud the business leaders in Christ for standing up for what they believe in. The Leadership Institute's campus reform has been reporting for years on examples of colleges and universities trying to suspend our constitutional rights on campus.
Do you feel like they're picking on you for unevenly, or is this discretion across the board?
So I feel like that's definitely discretion across the board. Every student was affected by what happened with business leaders in Christ. Before the court ruling in favor of that student org, the university tried to force all student groups to accept a non-discriminatory clause, and over 30 student orgs decided not to and were temporarily suspended because of that, including one that I'm involved in, Young Americans for Liberty.
Mm-hmm.
So why did the school have a problem with business leaders in Christ? Were they saying because you have to be or does the organization say you have to be a Christian, you have to believe in Christ to be a part of it? I can't imagine anyone will want to be a part of it if they don't have the same beliefs, but what was the argument there? What was the problem?
Yeah, so the problem was that a student just wanted to be on leadership but didn't relate to some of their beliefs, so the organization was like, I'm sorry, you can't be on leadership, and that's what started the whole thing.
There at the University of Iowa, Jordan, have you personally noticed that your First Amendment rights have been infringed?
It's very concerning that a taxpayer-funded institution like the University of Iowa would take such a step. I feel like college students are legal adults and our constitutional rights are not suspended when we get onto campus. And I feel like higher education requires freedom of speech, and tolerance and diversity means allowing for all opinions and beliefs, even those we don't agree with.
Yeah. We did reach out to the University of Iowa for a statement. They have not responded.
Jordan, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
National interests that dominate our economic and political life. We are the wealthiest nation in the history of the world. We should not have a grotesque level of wealth inequality.
That's Bernie Sanders officially announcing his second run for the White House. The independent socialist joining a crowded Democratic field on the heels of President Trump's speech in Miami last night, warning about the dangers of socialism.
So what do the voters in that neck of the woods think? Let's talk to Todd Pyro. He's talking to them over breakfast with friends at a very cozy-looking place called Cozy Corner there in Miami Springs, Florida. Todd?
Hey guys, good morning. Beautifully named, and how appropriate. Like you said, President Trump was just down the street less than 24 hours ago talking about the ills of socialism. And this morning, Democratic socialist Bernie Sanders announces he is going to be running for the White House in 2020. So we have some amazing reaction to that. Renan, your dad was a political prisoner in Cuba. That's right. You call socialism destructive. What's your reaction to Bernie Sanders entering the 2020 race?
That's right. Socialism is destructive, and I think that Bernie's vision for America is destructive as well. I don't think ultimately the Democrats are going to want him as their candidate. He almost got to be the front runner with Hillary, but it didn't work out, and I think they want someone younger. I don't think he's going to be a big factor.
All right, Renan, thank you. Frank, naval officer, thank you for your service, sir. The son of immigrants, you say socialism does not work. Your reaction to Bernie?
It's a failed experiment. It never works. You know, in Cuba and Venezuela, the examples are resounding. The thing about Bernie is that he's up front about his socialism. It's not going to be any surprises. So I hope the voting public educates themselves on the failed experiments and doesn't allow it to come to fruition.
In an area like we are here right now, so many Cuban Americans, so many Venezuelan Americans, what do you think the reaction to Bernie's announcement is going to be?
Oh my God, it's almost laughable. Yeah, great. I mean, we love our president. We love what he's doing, and adding candidates like Bernie to the Democratic ticket will only fortify his, his position. And it worries me. After 2020, when he's done with 4 more years, then what's going to happen? That's where my concern is.
Frank, thank you. Peter spent 30 years in law enforcement, has a very specific response to the Bernie Sanders announcement. What is it?
Yes, Bernie Sanders is a socialist, does not support law enforcement. He does not want to give us the tools we need, surplus military equipment and the weapons we need. And
he's getting a call.
In Orlando at the Pulse Bar, where 49 people were killed, the police used a military surplus vehicle. They knocked down the wall, and they were able to go in and shoot the guy who had killed 49 people.
And obviously this is going to be one of the points that's discussed in the many debates that you can expect over the course of the next couple months. Zachary, you say that for young people who like socialism, they need a field trip to either Cuba or Venezuela. What is your reaction to Bernie Sanders' announcement?
My reaction would be that two of my granddaughters have gone on field trips in their younger years in school, and both of them have been very educational. I think taking kids to places like Venezuela and Cuba would be an eye-opening experience to see what socialism is all about firsthand. I think Bernie running as the Democrat president candidate is the best thing in the world for the Democrats and the Republicans.
All right, why do you say that?
Because it's bad for the Democrats and great for the Republicans.
All right, Zachary, thank you. And finally, Felix. Felix had the line of the day. He calls Bernie Sanders a unicorn. Why?
Because he promises all these great things and rainbows and wonderful things, and he can't deliver on that. History has shown that socialism doesn't work in any country. They promise the poor and downtrodden all these wonderful things that never gets to happen. So unfortunately, he's not going to be able to produce, but he's going to get the votes maybe, which is great for us because I think it's going to help Trump win the presidency in 2020.
Felix, thank you for your time. Thank you, all of you. Give yourselves a round of applause. That was great stuff. Back to New York City.
Look at that.
Thank you,
Todd
Todd.
live at the Cozy Corner, getting reaction to Bernie Sanders, who is now running for president.
He is in the
Again.
race officially as of